They say betrayal doesn't always show up as a knife in the back. Sometimes, it's the echo of laughter in the desert heat while you're left standing barefoot in the dust. My name is Brielle Carter. I'm 8 months pregnant. And this is the story of how the people I called family tried to erase me. But the cameras were rolling, and the world was watching. It began on a Monday morning in June, the kind of morning where the sun paints everything gold but the air already feels too hot. Logan, my husband of 3 years, had insisted on a road trip from Reno to Summerlin to visit his family's desert resort. He said it would be a bonding experience. I should have known better when his voice was too smooth, too rehearsed. "Come on, Bree," he said, loading the last suitcase into the SUV. "It'll be our last getaway before the baby arrives." He smiled, but his eyes didn't. The Reeds were already waiting inside the car. Elaine, his perfectly groomed mother with eyes like polished ice, nodded at me but didn't speak. Sloane, Logan's sister, barely looked up from her phone, though I caught the smirk she gave when she saw my overnight bag was much smaller than theirs. They'd packed like queens heading to a gala. I was just hoping to survive 5 hours on the highway with swollen ankles. The first 100 miles were quiet. Too quiet. Logan kept glancing at the rearview mirror, whispering things to his mother that I couldn't hear. Every time I asked a question, Elaine would answer for him, her tone sugary with just enough bite to sting. "Logan needs to concentrate on the road, darling. You wouldn't want us to crash, would you?" By the time we reached the desert edge, the heat shimmered like liquid on the asphalt. My back ached. The baby kicked non-stop. I asked if we could stop somewhere, anywhere. Sloane rolled her eyes dramatically. "Again? You just used a restroom 30 minutes ago." Logan chuckled, but there was no warmth in it. I looked at him, silently pleading. He finally relented. We pulled into a remote gas station that looked like it hadn't seen a remodel since the 80s. A faded sign buzzed overhead. I stepped out carefully, my sandals barely shielding me from the searing pavement. Logan stayed in the car. I didn't notice the way Sloane was filming me with her phone as I walked toward the restroom. The cool air inside was a relief, but I moved fast, knowing how impatient they'd be. When I came back out, the car was gone. For a full 10 seconds, I couldn't breathe. Just silence. Blinding sun. Empty road. And then, faintly, I heard laughter echoing from a speaker inside the gas station shop. I turned. Inside the dusty glass windows stood a tall, older man watching a security monitor. His name was Ron Weaver, I'd later learn. Next to him, a woman with silver-streaked hair, his wife, Linda, stared with her mouth slightly open. They'd seen it all. My legs gave way, and Ron was already out the door, catching me under the arms before I hit the concrete. "What kind of monsters do that to a pregnant woman?" he growled. Linda helped me inside, handing me a bottle of cold water. My throat was so dry it burned. "I don't understand," I whispered. "My phone, my purse, everything's in that car." Ron pointed to the screen. "You want to see something?" He played the footage back. There I was, stepping into the restroom. Then the SUV's engine roared. Logan turned to look directly at the camera. His lips moved. And then he laughed. They all did. The last frame was the SUV rolling away in a cloud of dust. "They planned it," Linda said, her voice shaking with fury. "They left you on purpose." I couldn't think. I just kept rubbing my belly, feeling the soft flutters of life inside me. My baby. She was still okay. For now. Ron disappeared for a few minutes and returned with a manila folder and a USB drive. "Cameras record everything. I'm saving this. You'll need it." "I don't know what to do," I whispered. Linda's eyes met mine, fierce and unflinching. "We're going to show the world what they did." I was too exhausted to cry. Too stunned to scream. All I could do was sit there, in a cracked vinyl chair, while the desert outside shimmered with heat and betrayal. Then Linda picked up the old landline on the counter. I'm calling a friend of mine. She works for Channel 9 News in Las Vegas. If this doesn't make people angry, nothing will. Outside, the wind picked up, tossing sand across the empty lot. Something shifted in my chest. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was fury. Maybe it was both. But I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning. The desert doesn't lie. It shows you what's real, what survives, and what burns. And as I sat in the weaver's cramped back office, sipping cold water with trembling hands, the truth scorched its way through every part of me. Ron handed me a phone. Use this. It's old, but it works. You need to call someone. My hands were still shaking, but I dialed the only person I trusted, Maya Ellis. My best friend since high school. She had always seen through Logan's charming facade. Maya, I whispered when she answered. They left me. On purpose. There was silence. Then fury. Where are you? I told her everything, where I was, what happened. She didn't ask how or why. She only said, I'm on my way. But Brielle, you need to check social media. Ron turned his computer toward me and logged into Facebook. My breath caught in my throat. There, plastered across Logan Reed's profile, were photos posted less than 20 minutes ago. Him, Elaine, and Sloane lounging by the crystal-clear pool at the Summerlin Ridge Resort. Sloane in a sun hat and bikini, Elaine sipping champagne, Logan flashing a grin like nothing in the world was wrong. The caption read, "Finally free. Family first. Some people just aren't built for the Reed lifestyle. Hashtag after hashtag, hashtag desert bliss, hashtag no drama, hashtag family time." Beneath it, comments from their elite circle poured in. Laughter. Thumbs up. Snide emojis. The Reed family was painting a picture of me as a problem they'd just cut out. I stared at the screen, mouth dry. Maya's voice echoed through the line. They're trying to control the story. But we won't let them. Ron stood over my shoulder, jaw clenched. They think you're powerless. But you're not. You have footage. Witnesses. And now, you have the truth on your side. Just then, Linda emerged from the back with a manila folder full of paper and a fresh bottle of water. Channel 9 is sending a crew. You're going to be heard. I tried to nod. I wanted to be strong. But as another sharp pain twisted through my abdomen, I winced and leaned forward. Are you okay? Linda asked, her hand steady on my shoulder. Just Braxton Hicks, I muttered. I think. But the pain didn't pass quickly. I felt another one building in my lower back. My breath hitched. Or maybe not. Ron didn't hesitate. I'm calling an ambulance. The world blurred a little as I leaned against the desk, one hand pressed to my belly. Out the window, the road stretched like a mirage. I imagined Logan laughing with his family, sipping drinks while the woman carrying his child was driven off in an emergency vehicle. This wasn't just emotional cruelty. It was dangerous. Reckless. Minutes later, the ambulance arrived. The paramedics were calm, focused. I was loaded in, the Weavers close behind in their pickup truck. As the siren wailed toward the nearest hospital, I stared at the ceiling above me, trying to make sense of the last 4 hours of my life. At the hospital, I was admitted for observation. The nurses were kind but concerned. The contractions were real, one of them said. Stress can sometimes trigger early labor. We're keeping you overnight. By evening, I was lying in a hospital bed, under white sheets, surrounded by machines. But the room wasn't quiet. The footage from the gas station had already hit local news. Linda's friend hadn't wasted a second. Channel 9 broadcasted the video with commentary. The scene was horrifying. There I was, stepping out of the restroom, looking confused. Then the SUV peeled off, Logan laughing as he shouted out the window. Catch your breath, sweetheart. Take a nice walk. The laughter echoed. The desert wind roared. And the internet erupted. Nurses began whispering outside my room. One of them finally peeked in. Mrs. Carter, you might want to turn on Channel 9. They're at the resort. Maya had just arrived and helped me with the remote. The screen flickered to life. Elaine Reed stood on the manicured lawn of the resort, flanked by Logan and Sloane. Her voice was polished, saccharine. This is all a misunderstanding. Brielle has been very emotional lately. Pregnancy hormones, you know. She asked for space. The reporter frowned. Ma'am, we have footage of your son and family laughing as they left her in the desert heat with no phone, no money, and no protection. How do you explain that? Elaine faltered. For the first time, the cracks in her mask were visible. Maya leaned closer. They're losing control. People are angry. Really angry. Sure enough, the Reed's Foundation page was flooded with furious comments. Longtime donors pulled their names. Their company, Reed Estate Holdings, began trending, ***, but for all the wrong reasons, ***. Just then, a nurse walked in with a message. There's a journalist here who wants to speak with you. Tessa Grant. She's with Channel 9. Maya looked at me. This is your moment. I sat up. My voice was hoarse, but steady. Let her in. When Tessa entered with her camera crew, she took one look at me, hospital gown, swollen belly, eyes hollow with exhaustion, and her expression shifted from professional to protective. Are you ready to tell your story? She asked softly. I nodded. I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing this because my daughter deserves to know the truth. Because no woman should ever be discarded and humiliated like this. The camera started rolling. I told everything. From the moment Logan changed during the pregnancy, to the cruel comments, to the silent bullying by Elaine and Sloane. And finally, to the moment I stepped out of that restroom and saw my family drive away without me. When the interview ended, Tessa leaned forward. This story isn't going away. Not anymore. Outside, a crowd had gathered. Reporters. Advocates. Strangers who saw themselves in my story. And deep down, I knew, the worst was yet to come. Because the Reeds hadn't just tried to humiliate me. They had a plan. And I was about to find out how far it really went. The next morning, my hospital room felt like a war room. Nurses came and went, adjusting monitors, while Maya sat in the corner scrolling through her phone like she was tracking enemy movement. Tessa Grant had promised the interview would go national by noon. But the storm had already started. My phone buzzed, a message from an unfamiliar number. It was a staff member from the resort. He'd found my purse and phone in the suite where Logan's family was staying. He saw the news and said he couldn't stay quiet. Maya retrieved it for me, along with something else, my hospital bag. The one I'd packed weeks ago with onesies, baby blankets, and a small journal for my daughter. Logan had taken it with him. Left it behind like garbage. I clutched it in my lap, overwhelmed. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was physical. He had driven off with every single item meant to protect our child. But then Maya said, "You need to see this." She turned her tablet around. On the screen was a leaked video, security footage again, this time from the hotel suite. Someone had hacked a cloud backup from one of their phones. The video was short but sickening. Sloane filming Logan as he bragged to Elaine. "She'll be halfway into labor from the heat before anyone even finds her," he laughed. "Then we'll have the evidence we need." Elaine's voice replied, "This will teach her to know her place." She embarrassed the family. You can't trust a woman who teaches art to children and wears flats to charity galas. Maya muttered, "They didn't just abandon you. They planned this." That word. Planned. A knock on the door interrupted us. The nurse stepped in. "There's a man from Florida Equity Insurance here. He says it's urgent." I felt a wave of nausea. That was Logan's employer. I'd met their CEO once at a charity dinner. I didn't expect help from them now. The man who entered wore a dark suit and carried a folder. He introduced himself as Connor Hale, Chief Ethics Officer. His tone was firm and direct. "We've terminated Logan Reed effective immediately," he said. "We've also suspended our corporate sponsorship of the Reed Foundation pending investigation." He placed the folder on my lap. "I think you should see this." Inside were screenshots, emails, internal memos, searches for family court lawyers. Keyword tags like maternal instability, mental fitness, prenatal stress reaction. Logan had been building a false profile of me for months. Connor continued, "We found that Logan used company time and resources to research maternal custody strategies. He tried to set legal grounds for declaring you unfit." I couldn't speak. The weight of it all crushed my chest. "But there's more," Connor added. "Since your interview aired last night, several female employees at our firm have come forward, alleging that Logan made repeated, inappropriate remarks to them. Some of these complaints date back a year or more." He handed me a separate folder. "We're forwarding everything to law enforcement. But we want you to know, what happened to you has revealed something systemic. Your courage is making a difference." When he left, I opened the second folder. And what I found inside made my skin crawl. Internal chats between Logan and senior Reed Foundation members. There was a memo labeled, "Postpartum Threat Analysis." They'd outlined how to position me as an emotional risk. A footnote read, "In the event of early labor, capture video if possible. Show erratic behavior." I stood up so fast the monitors beeped. Maya helped steady me. "They were going to use your pain as proof," she whispered. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a number I recognized. Jillian Price, Logan's executive assistant. I hadn't spoken to her since my wedding. Her voice was shaky when I answered. "I can't keep this to myself anymore," she said. "I just emailed you something. Please check it." The document was a scanned insurance policy. A life insurance policy taken out on me. Signed by Logan. Beneficiaries, Logan Reed and Elaine Reed. The coverage kicked in during the third trimester. I stared at it, breath frozen in my throat. Jillian's voice cracked. "They planned to trigger a medical event. If anything happened to you, they'd collect nearly $1 million. They thought it would be easy to spin. Emotional stress. Desert heat. And no witnesses. But they forgot one thing. There were witnesses. And cameras. And now, me." I hung up and looked at Maya. "We're going to the FBI." Maya nodded. "I'll drive." I gathered the folders, the footage, the printed emails. I wasn't scared anymore. I was furious. This wasn't just betrayal. It was premeditated abuse. A crime dressed up in luxury. As we walked out of the hospital room, nurses stopped us in the hallway. "You're Brielle Carter, right?" one asked. "Yes. I saw you on the news. You're the reason my sister finally left her boyfriend last night." Another one added, "You're not just telling a story. You're changing them." The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly. But my steps were steady now. I knew what was coming. And I was ready to fight. The FBI office in Las Vegas was colder than I expected, air-conditioned to the point of discomfort, a sharp contrast to the fire burning in my chest. Maya sat beside me, her knee bouncing with nervous energy, while the agent across the desk scanned the folders I'd brought. Every document. Every email. Every recorded phone call and printed insurance policy. Agent Rivera was composed, but I caught the twitch in her jaw as she reviewed the material. We've seen some twisted custody schemes before, she said quietly. But this borders on conspiracy to defraud and criminal negligence. You've done the right thing bringing this to us. The right thing. That phrase echoed in my mind as we were escorted out of the federal building with the assurance that investigations were already underway. Still, it didn't feel like justice yet. Not while Logan, Elaine, and Sloane were still lounging poolside in Summerlin, spinning lies behind curated smiles. But the lie wouldn't last long. By the time we reached the hospital again, a Channel 9 van was already pulling into the parking lot. Tessa Grant jumped out, her face flushed. You need to see what's happening at the resort. She pulled up her tablet and streamed a live broadcast. The camera panned across the grand entrance of the Summerlin Ridge Resort. Guests with rolling suitcases were leaving early. Staff members whispered to reporters at the gates. Then came the shot everyone had waited for, Elaine Reed being led out by resort security, her sunglasses pushed up on her head, lips tight with fury. Behind her, Logan and Sloane followed, looking less like a picture-perfect family and more like exiles. The resort has terminated the Reed family's stay, the anchor explained. According to sources, other guests complained about the negative media attention and the disturbing footage aired last night. It was happening. The empire was cracking. But then, another ping from my phone. A private message from an anonymous account. It contained a video link labeled, *, for your protection. *. I hesitated. Then clicked. The footage opened with a dashcam view, Logan's company car. The date stamp was from 2 weeks earlier. The audio was faint but clear. Elaine's voice, once she breaks down, we bring in the lawyer. Use the stress. The baby's early arrival will work in our favor. Logan, she's fragile. Always has been. We'll make it look like she's having a breakdown. The car was parked. You could hear the click of a lighter, the low hum of the AC. Then Sloane's voice joined, once the baby's here, we get custody. She's weak. She'll cave. I stopped the video. My heart was pounding. They had rehearsed this. Practiced it. Talked about it like a boardroom strategy. Later that night, while I held my belly and tried to steady my breath, Jillian Price showed up at the hospital. I'm not supposed to be here, she whispered, pulling a thick envelope from her coat. But I had to show you this. Inside were wire transfers. Legal retainer records. Emails from Elaine to a private investigator. They were planning to monitor my post-birth recovery for any sign of unfitness. They were laying groundwork for a custody claim before my daughter was even born. They thought I'd be dead weight, Jillian said softly. But I couldn't stay silent. You needed to know. I pressed the envelope to my chest. The next morning, the firestorm reached a new level. Reed Estate Holdings issued a statement suspending Logan from all leadership duties. Elaine's foundation board held an emergency vote to dissolve its operations. Sloane's influencer brand lost 3 major sponsors overnight. But the most satisfying headline? FBI opens criminal investigation into Reed family following gas station abandonment footage. Tessa called me just as I was preparing to leave the hospital. National networks want your story, she said. Your name is everywhere. This could be a movement. I looked down at my belly, feeling my daughter's strong kicks. I hadn't wanted this attention. I hadn't asked for it. But maybe, just maybe, it was exactly what the world needed. Then came the call I hadn't expected. Logan. His number lit up my screen. I stared at it. Tessa, standing beside me, nodded. Put it on speaker. I answered. Silence at first. Then his voice, like syrup masking gasoline. Bree. We need to talk. Alone. No, I said. You lost that right. This has gotten out of control, he continued. My job. My family's reputation. But we can still fix it. There's nothing to fix, I said calmly. You plan to take my child. You laughed while abandoning me in the heat. He didn't deny it. You don't understand the pressure I was under. Elaine, she pushed me. You know how she is. No, Logan, I said. I know how you are. His voice dropped lower. Be careful what you say. You're making powerful enemies. I've already made them, I replied. And I'm not afraid anymore. The line went dead. That evening, I walked outside the hospital for the first time in days. The sun was setting over the Nevada mountains. The wind was dry, but it didn't sting like before. And that's when I saw it, media crews setting up outside. Reporters waiting. Strangers holding signs that read, "We believe Betrayal, justice for mothers, end the silence." For the first time since that gas station, I smiled. They tried to erase me. But instead, they exposed themselves. And the fire they started was burning down everything they thought would protect them. By the 5th day in the hospital, the air had changed. It wasn't just the scent of antiseptic or the quiet buzz of machines, it was the tension, the waiting. Nurses came in with updates about the baby's strong heartbeat, about my vitals stabilizing. But outside those 4 walls, the world was spinning faster than I could process. The FBI had raided the Reed Foundation's downtown office the previous night. News anchors showed cardboard boxes being wheeled out, staff members shielding their faces, and federal agents flipping through ledgers thick with what the media called evidence of orchestrated familial fraud. Every update Maya read aloud made my stomach twist tighter. Not out of fear. But because justice, after crawling for days, was finally moving. Still, my body had not forgiven me. That morning, sharp pain cut through me like lightning. Not a cramp. Not a Braxton Hicks. A real contraction. The nurse came rushing in, checked my abdomen, then called for the doctor. My body trembled, heart racing, and for a moment I thought, this is it. She's coming. But the contractions slowed. Then stopped. False labor. Again. They kept me in a quiet room under observation. The doctor explained that trauma often sends the body into waves of confusion, preparing for labor before its time. I had to rest. I had to stay calm. But there was no peace to be found. Maya sat beside my bed with a laptop on her knees. You ready for this? She asked. What now? She turned the screen toward me. A whistleblower just leaked internal Reed financial documents. And it's bad. I scanned the PDFs on the screen. Buried among them was a trust fund tied to my unborn daughter's name. Created 2 months before my pregnancy announcement went public. Established by Elaine Reed. I didn't know this existed, I said, stunned. You weren't supposed to, Maya said. It's a layered scheme. They tried to make it look like a gift. But the payout structure, if you lost custody, they'd gain full financial control. It's sick. There were clauses. One stated that any claim of mental instability in the mother during the first year of the child's life would trigger a trust transfer to designated guardians. Elaine and Logan were listed as trustees. They planned everything, I whispered. Even how to profit from taking her away from me. Another knock on the door. This time it was Tessa Grant. Her face was lit with urgency. You need to see this, she said, pulling out her phone. On screen was a shaky video taken by a staff member at the Summerlin Ridge Resort. Elaine Reed being escorted in handcuffs by federal agents. The reporter's voice was breathless. Sources say Mrs. Reed is facing charges related to insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit custodial interference, and financial exploitation of a dependent adult. I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. Elaine Reed, the woman who once scoffed at my public school manners and mocked the way I dressed, was now being booked into a holding cell. Her pearl earrings still swinging, her lipstick still flawless, but her power, gone. Logan was next. According to the broadcast, the FBI had found evidence that he personally falsified documents about my mental health. Fabricated emails. Altered screenshots. All designed to portray me as unstable and dangerous. He was trying to build a legal fortress, Tessa said. But every lie he built left a paper trail. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from the district attorney's office. They had formally charged Logan Reed with attempted custodial interference, falsification of medical records, and criminal endangerment of a pregnant woman. The DA was going public in a press conference that afternoon. I don't know how to feel, I said quietly. Feel everything, Maya told me. You've earned it. But I didn't have time to feel. Because minutes later, my body betrayed me again. A deep pressure rolled through my abdomen, stronger than before. My hand gripped the rail of the bed. Something's happening, I gasped. It's different this time. The nurse rushed in, took one look at me, and hit the emergency button. Within moments, the room was flooded with motion. The doctor examined me, her voice urgent. You're dilating. The baby's coming. She's early, but she's strong. We're moving now. They wheeled me down the hallway under bright hospital lights, nurses shouting orders, Maya running beside the gurney holding my hand. My daughter. She wasn't supposed to arrive yet. But maybe, just maybe, she knew I needed her. The delivery room was a blur of white coats, gloved hands, and encouraging words. I screamed through the contractions, pushing with everything I had, and through it all, I imagined her, safe, free, untouched by lies and lawyers and cruel intentions. One last push, and then. Crying. Not mine. Hers. My baby's first cry. A strong, fierce wail that sliced through the chaos like a battle cry. They laid her on my chest, still slick, still warm, her tiny fingers curling instinctively toward mine. Lily, I whispered. You're here. The doctor smiled. She's perfect. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Maya sobbed beside me. Tessa filmed from a distance, capturing the exact second Lily opened her eyes. This wasn't the end of the story. This was her beginning. Ours. And the world was watching. By the time I returned to my hospital room, Lily nestled against my chest with her tiny hand wrapped around my thumb. The world outside had already changed. The first photo of her, swaddled in a cream blanket, sleeping with the peace of someone who hadn't yet met cruelty, had made its way onto social media. Not through me. Through Tessa's camera team, who shared it with a single line. She survived what was meant to break her. So did her mother. It exploded. Thousands of comments. Support from across the country. Strangers calling me brave. But more than that, stories, countless women, sharing their own brushes with emotional abandonment, manipulative families, and survival. It wasn't just about the Reeds anymore. It was about all of us. But the legal gears kept turning. The next morning, Connor Hale from Florida Equity Insurance returned to the hospital. This time, he didn't come alone. With him was a woman in a smart navy blazer who introduced herself as Special Agent Lynn from the Federal Financial Crimes Division. We've traced the payments, she said without preamble. Elaine Reed funneled over $200,000 into a shell nonprofit registered under her charity's name. The purpose? To build a custody case that would disqualify you from parental rights based on fabricated mental instability. Your pregnancy was the linchpin in their plan. Connor added, what's more disturbing is that Logan used his executive position to approve health insurance claims connected to that fund. It crosses into federal territory, fraud against both the company and the state. As they spoke, I looked at Lily. She was sleeping peacefully, her tiny chest rising and falling. They wanted to take her from me before she ever had the chance to breathe air. Agent Lynn placed a stack of papers on the table. These are signed statements from former Reed Foundation employees. Some were paid off to stay quiet. Others were threatened. But you inspired them to come forward. They're helping build the case. That afternoon, the media circus reached its peak. Tessa knocked lightly before entering my room. "Are you ready?" she asked gently. I nodded. She turned the monitor around. Live news coverage. A press conference in front of the Las Vegas courthouse. "We have breaking news," the reporter announced. Logan Reed was taken into custody this morning outside his private attorney's office. Elaine Reed, arrested yesterday, has been officially denied bail due to the severity of the charges and the risk of evidence tampering. Sources confirm that their foundation, once hailed as a pillar of family values, is being dismantled under federal oversight. The screen shifted to grainy footage of Logan in a tailored suit, flanked by federal marshals. No more bravado. No more curated smiles. Just sweat on his brow and defeat in his shoulders. Sloane had gone silent. Her influencer career had dissolved overnight. Major platforms flagged her accounts for misinformation. Her brand partnerships were pulled. The glittering facade she had spent years building collapsed within 72 hours. But it wasn't over. That evening, Gillian Price visited again. She looked worn, like she hadn't slept. "I found something else," she said, setting a USB drive on my tray table. Before the foundation files were locked, I copied all the private memos from the Reed family's estate attorney. I plugged it in with Maya's help. The files were endless: contracts, trust modifications, backdoor custody agreements. But one folder stood out. Operation Clean Break. Inside, a detailed timeline. Every phase of their plan. Initiate family trip. Isolate subject during pregnancy. Trigger incident to document instability. Deploy media narrative, emotional outburst. File emergency custody petition. Secure control of trust funds. It read like war strategy. Except the target was me. And the weapon was silence. But I hadn't stayed silent. "I'll submit this to the FBI directly," Gillian said. "I'll testify if I have to. No more hiding." I stood, holding Lily close, feeling her warmth and breath against me. "Thank you," I whispered. "You didn't have to do this." "I did," she replied, voice breaking. "Because I saw what they did to you. And I stayed quiet too long." By morning, another headline ran across every screen. "The House of Reeds Falls, Betrayal Carter files civil suit for custody conspiracy, financial exploitation." Tessa's voiceover played beneath the scrolling images. Sources say Ms. Carter's legal team is preparing to launch a multi-pronged case, not only to seek justice for herself but to establish legal precedents for emotional abuse and manipulation during pregnancy. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like truth. And truth had become my sharpest weapon. Maya entered the room holding a bouquet of sunflowers. "You have visitors," she said. Ron and Linda Weaver stood just behind her, smiles soft and eyes wet. They were the first to believe me. The first to act. Ron walked over and looked down at Lily. "She's a fighter, just like her mama." I reached for his hand. "You saved me that day." Linda added, "No. You saved yourself. We just gave you a place to start." And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about exposing what they did. It was about rebuilding what they tried to destroy. Me. Lily. Our story. One truth at a time. It started as a petition. A simple document, written by a group of local advocates using my story as the catalyst. It called for new legal protections for pregnant women, particularly against abandonment, coercion, and emotional sabotage. They titled it the Carter Act. At first, I thought it was symbolic. A gesture. A headline. But then it gained traction. Within a week, the petition had over 100,000 signatures. Within 2, it had the backing of 2 state senators. Within a month, it was on the floor of the Nevada state legislature. The same week I brought Lily home from the hospital, the bill passed its first vote. The Carter Act would make it a felony to deliberately abandon a pregnant woman in a dangerous or isolated location, with heightened penalties if it endangered the child or involved premeditated coercion. It also expanded the state's definitions of psychological abuse in domestic partnerships, recognizing intent and financial manipulation as key factors. It was more than I had imagined. But nothing felt real until the day I was invited to testify. The hearing chamber in Carson City was quiet and cold, filled with lawmakers, reporters, and victims like me, each holding their own stories like precious stones they'd once been told were worthless. I stood at the front, Lily asleep in Maya's arms behind me, and read my statement into the microphone. My name is Betrayal Carter. I was left in the desert while 8 months pregnant. Abandoned by my husband and his family, who had crafted a plan to take my daughter from me. They thought I would break. That no one would believe me. That no law could touch them. I paused. The room was still. But I had witnesses. And evidence. And a voice. And now I have a daughter who will grow up knowing that no matter what anyone tried to take from her, her mother never gave up. The vote passed that afternoon. Unanimously. As I stepped outside, cameras flashed, questions were shouted, and hands reached for quotes. But all I could think about was the sunlight on Lily's face. This time, it didn't burn. It warmed. Weeks passed. The Reeds criminal cases were scheduled. Elaine's trial would begin first, 5 counts, including fraud, criminal conspiracy, and custodial coercion. Logan's was more complex, involving federal and corporate charges. Sloan had turned state's witness, offering full cooperation in exchange for immunity and the surrender of her public assets. Tessa visited often, keeping her coverage fair but firm. You've changed the way people see this kind of abuse, she told me one night. Emotional sabotage isn't just a bad relationship. It's a weapon. You helped define it. But I didn't feel like a hero. I was just trying to stay afloat, teaching part-time again at the art center, nursing Lily in quiet moments, and attending support groups with other women who had come forward because they saw my story on the news. One woman, Marissa, had fled her fiancé after recognizing the same patterns: gaslighting, financial monitoring, isolation. I saw the footage, she told me. The way he laughed. That was the moment I knew I wasn't imagining things in my own life. That's when it hit me. What they tried to do to me wasn't just personal. It was systemic. And now, it was exposed. Florida Equity Insurance, Logan's former employer, had launched an internal ethics overhaul, with Connor Hale at the helm. They invited me to serve as a consultant for their corporate training program on ethical family law boundaries and workplace harassment. It felt surreal. Just months earlier, I was a woman left in the sun, her dignity evaporating on the pavement. Now, I was standing in front of corporate boards, showing them the footage, the emails, the trail of manipulation dressed in politeness and professionalism. And I could see it in their eyes, the horror, the shame, the understanding. At night, when the cameras were off and Lily slept beside me in her crib, I often sat at my desk with that same manila folder Ron had first handed me. The one with the security footage. I kept it not as a wound, but as a weapon. A reminder. That no matter how carefully someone crafts a lie, the truth waits. Patient. Silent. Unblinking. Just like a camera lens. The resort where it all began was now under new ownership. They offered to host a fundraising gala to support women's shelters and legal defense initiatives. I declined. Some places, no matter how repainted or renamed, still smell of smoke. Instead, I returned to the gas station in Summerlin, where it all began. Ron and Linda were there. They'd installed a small plaque beneath the security monitor that read, "Justice begins with witnesses." I stood there, holding Lily in my arms, staring at the exact spot where I had once stood empty-handed and forgotten. Now, I was neither. I was full. And I would never be invisible again. It arrived in a plain envelope. No return address. No handwriting. Just my name typed in the center, cold and sterile like a hospital form. Maya found it in my mailbox and brought it in with the day's delivery. I hesitated before opening it. My fingers hovered above the seal, heart tapping faster than I cared to admit. Part of me already knew who it was from. Inside, a single page. Typed. No greeting. No signature. Just Logan's voice on the page, still arrogant even in written form. I never thought you would fight back. I underestimated you. I always thought you were soft. But you weren't soft, you were just good. And I didn't know what to do with good people. He wrote about how Elaine controlled everything. About how Sloane was always the favorite. How the pressure to keep the family's image clean turned into pressure to keep me small. He admitted the plan started as a way to regain control and ended in a calculated risk that got away from him. He said he was sorry. But not once did he say he regretted it. Only that he lost. Maya read it after I did. Her reaction was immediate. He wrote this for himself. Not for you. He wanted to be remembered as someone who admitted the truth, not someone who destroyed a woman. She was right. I tore the letter in half, then again, until the pieces were small enough to forget. But I didn't throw them away. I placed them in a box at the back of my closet. Not for forgiveness. For memory. Because someday, Lily might ask. And I want her to see every side of the fire she was born into. Weeks passed. I returned to the art studio where I used to teach before everything happened. The smell of paint and wood shavings filled the air, and the soft chatter of children creating color from silence reminded me why I'd loved this place. The director welcomed me with a bouquet and tears. We never believed the stories he tried to spread, she said. We knew who you were. The first day back, I hosted a freedom project. I asked the kids to draw what safety looked like. Some drew houses. Some drew stars. One little girl drew a mother holding a baby, standing in front of a giant wall made of light. I hung it near my desk. That same week, Logan's trial officially began. I didn't attend in person. But I followed every update. Witnesses testified about the fabricated documents. Emails were read aloud. The dashcam audio played in the courtroom, Logan's voice clear and casual as he discussed my emotional vulnerability, as if it were a chess move. When the verdict came, guilty on all counts, it didn't make me cheer. It made me breathe. Elaine's sentencing followed. 5 years, with no possibility of parole. Her final statement was rehearsed, tearful, and hollow. She spoke of misguided loyalty and protecting family tradition. The judge interrupted her. You orchestrated the endangerment of your grandchild's life. The only family tradition I see here is cruelty. Sloane avoided prison. Her cooperation and full confession saved her. But her social life evaporated. The influence. The luxury. Gone. The last I saw of her was in a blurry photo at a thrift store in Reno, trying to sell designer handbags to strangers who didn't recognize her. I received one final email from the FBI a week later. It confirmed that the Reed Foundation's assets had been liquidated to establish a new fund, the Lily Grant. Named not by me, but by the victims who came forward because they saw themselves in my daughter's story. The Lily Grant would provide emergency legal aid to women facing coercion during pregnancy. First in Nevada. Then, as the network expanded, nationwide. I never thought Lily's name would become a law, a fund, or a movement. I just wanted her to be safe. One quiet night, I sat by her crib and whispered a truth I hadn't yet spoken aloud. They tried to erase us. She stirred slightly, curling her hand near her cheek. But we wrote ourselves back in. Later that week, Tessa Grant aired a final documentary segment, *The Carter Case, From Silence to Sentence*, *It closed with drone footage of the gas station, the courtroom, and a soft pan across a classroom where I stood holding a paintbrush in front of beaming children. I didn't speak in the final frame. I didn't have to. Because by then, the world already knew the story. And this time, they weren't looking at the reeds. They were looking at me. The house I live in now has no mirrors. Not because I'm afraid of what I'll see, but because I already know who I am. I don't need reflections anymore to remind me I survived. I see it every time Lily wakes up with her fists in the air and a giggle in her throat. I see it in the emails from strangers who start with, "I didn't know how to leave, until I saw your story." I bought the house quietly. A modest 2-bedroom with a garden out back and wind chimes that sing when the desert breeze kicks up. No gates. No guards. Just peace. I paid for it with the consulting work, the speaking engagements, and the settlement Florida equity insurance provided after their board officially denounced Logan's actions. The world doesn't always give you peace. Sometimes you have to build it yourself. The inside of the house smells like lavender and baby lotion. There's a bookshelf in the corner filled with picture books, court transcripts, and a worn copy of the Nevada Family Rights Act with my name printed in the preamble. There's also a shoebox in the closet. It holds 2 photographs. One, a still frame from the gas station security footage. Me, standing alone in the parking lot, shielding my belly with both hands as the SUV pulls away in the distance. 2, Lily's first smile. One represents the day I lost everything I thought I needed. The other is the day I realized I already had everything that mattered. Sometimes I speak at events, but not as often as I used to. I pick my causes carefully now. Abuse disguised as family loyalty. Coercion wrapped in gifts. Trusts, estates, and all the invisible walls people build around a victim to make her feel like a guest in her own life. At one event, I was introduced as the woman who took down the most untouchable family in Nevada. But I didn't clap for that. I clapped for the mother who stood up during the Q&A session and said, "When I saw you on the news, I packed a bag and left before my in-laws could convince my husband to file for custody." I clapped for the teenager who said, "I didn't know financial control was a kind of abuse. Now I do." I clapped for every person who saw their silence as survival, and finally realized that their voice was a weapon. Lily doesn't know the story yet. She knows mommy works with nice people, and bad guys go to court. But someday, I'll show her the boxes. The recordings. The law books. The news clips. And when she asks if it was scary, I'll tell her yes. And I'll tell her I did it anyway. Sometimes, I catch myself remembering the early days, before Summerlin, before the betrayal, when I still believed Logan's eyes when he said he loved me. I don't hate that version of myself. She was hopeful. She was kind. She didn't know cruelty could come dressed in tailored suits and poolside photos. But I don't miss her. I became someone else the moment I stepped out of that gas station bathroom and realized I'd been left behind. I became someone better. Now, my mornings begin with paint-smeared fingers and Lily's cereal stuck in my hair. No board meetings. No cold silences. No eyes watching for me to trip. Only color. Only growth. Only us. The other day, I passed the old gas station. It had been remodeled. Fresh coat of paint. A new sign that read Weaver's Outpost, home of the Summerlin survivor. Inside, they kept the original security monitor mounted on the wall, still playing a loop of me being left behind, and walking back inside. Tourists stop and ask what it means. And Ron just smiles and says, "It means she didn't stay there." He's right. I didn't. And neither will anyone else, if I have anything to say about it. I once believed that the biggest things we leave behind are buildings, foundations, names carved into stone. But now I know better. What we truly leave behind are echoes. Words we speak that become laws. Actions we take that become someone else's courage. Moments we survive that become someone else's blueprint for freedom. Lily is learning to walk now. Wobbling from couch to chair with outstretched arms and a grin that could melt concrete. Every step she takes is a quiet rebellion against the legacy someone else tried to write for her. She doesn't know it yet, but she's walking on the ashes of a story that was meant to bury her. And she's smiling anyway. On the 1-year anniversary of the day I was left at that gas station, I received an invitation from the Nevada State Bar Association. They wanted to recognize the Carter Act's impact on custody reform and emotional abuse legislation. I stood behind the podium in a blue dress Lily helped me pick, accepting the award with steady hands. But my speech wasn't about me. It was about the women I met in courthouse hallways. The teachers who wrote letters. The gas station owners who didn't look away. The assistants who risked their jobs to leak the truth. And the babies, born into chaos, who now sleep under safe roofs. I ended my speech with the only thing that mattered. We are not made by what was done to us. We are made by what we do next. Afterward, as I stepped outside into the sunlight, I noticed a small group gathered at the foot of the courthouse stairs. One of them was Marissa, the woman from my support group, the one who had fled her controlling fiancé. She had a baby strapped to her chest now. She caught my eye and smiled. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Truth recognizes truth. That evening, I returned home, exhausted but at peace. Lily was waiting with Maya, who had become more than a godmother. She was family. We watched the sunset together, the sky stretching wide and golden over the Nevada hills. You're not the same woman, Maya said quietly, handing me a glass of water. Not anymore. I don't want to be, I replied. She was too trusting. Too careful. Too good, she added. And now you're good and unbreakable. I didn't respond. But I smiled. Later that night, I placed a final item into the box in my closet. It was a copy of the signed legislation, the Carter Act, tied with a pale yellow ribbon. I don't open the box often. But I keep it anyway. Not as a shrine to what happened. But as proof that stories don't end where the pain begins. They evolve. They ripple. They change everything. And when Lily is old enough, I'll tell her about the road trip we never finished. About the heat, the silence, the moment I thought I was alone, and the people who showed up anyway. I'll tell her about Ron and Linda. About Maya. About cameras and truth. About how I almost gave up. And then how I didn't. And when she asks me if I'm still angry, I'll tell her no. Because anger passes. But power remains. And the greatest thing I ever did wasn't surviving. It was showing the world that survival is just the beginning. We built a new story. And this time, no one gets to erase us.